Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavid Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Who would like to chant?
ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिनां मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्ददामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी।
नमोऽस्तु नमोऽस्तु देव्यास विशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्द्यातपत्रनेत्रे येन त्वया भारततैलभूता प्रचालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृततुके नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं तं च शानूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वां सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा कशम्।
Thank you. So we are still on the 8th verse, but today we will be completing the 8th verse of this 13th chapter. So we saw how, after Lord Krishna has taught, discussed the topics of what is Kshetram and what is Kshetrajnam, he comes to this topic called as Jnanam or knowledge. And here, the word jnanam actually refers to a whole set of steps or sopanam or virtues. And of course, when we talk about steps, it's not as if only if we have the lower step can we go to the next step, but it is actually a whole basket, a bouquet of values. And these are values which really gives us an indication, or it's an indicator of the kind of progress we are making within ourselves. Yes, it is a measure of spiritual progress, but spiritual progress needs a field where you can actually practice these values, and all of us have been given those fields wherever we are. Whether we are a husband, a father, a mother, grandmother, each one of these fields are where actually I can practice these values. And using these values, I can actually really, it'll take me to understanding, of course, the values is the first part, and then practicing them is a way for us to measure our own spiritual progress. So just like how, we have our physical parameters like our weight, our BMI, and everything, which indicates really a sense of, where we are with regard to our weight loss or even our blood pressure, cholesterol levels, which indicates where we are with regard to our physical health. You can take this set of values as something which indicates our mental health. our mental health is really the driving force for the physical health. And it is something which gives us that peace of mind to enjoy. And only if my mind is healthy, right? Only if my mind is healthy will I be able to focus on these higher values. So, only when my mind is healthy, what happens is my intellect gets activated, and when the intellect is activated, it really gives us a way to understand all these values that we are talking about. So that is the most important thing here. So the mind has to be relaxed. For the mind to be relaxed, of course, we need to ensure that we have a proper routine. And the routine has to be laced with all these values. And practicing these values really gives us a very healthy spiritual routine, which, is the measure of progress. And so that is what we have so far. So this is the 20 values, and which is there to prepare our mind. And here we have these five values which we talked about. And last time we covered Shanti, we covered Acharya Upasanam and Shaucham. And today we are going to complete with this two values, which is Thairyam and Atma Vinigraha. Very quickly, I just want to, get as a kind of a reflection. Can each one of you, take one of these values and kind of give me an idea how is it practically valuable or useful in what we do? What do you think? Jayashri, you want to pick any value?
Maybe I'll go with Arjavam.
Archavam, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah,
One.
most,
Oh, no,
yeah,
no, no, that is no, no. I was thinking about Guru because I needed the Guru. Acharya Upasanam would
Acharya
make.
Upasanam, okay, perfect, no problem. I know it's not here, but please.
Yeah, because I feel without the teacher we can't. We need a real guide and who would help us, to practice the values. Even if we understand it, it's difficult to practice it. And
Uh-huh.
so I feel that
Acharya Upasanam,
we're blessed
meditation,
to
the
have an
teacher.
Acharya like you who's guiding us through
No,
this
no,
journey.
no. No, I'm just a mentor, I would say, or a coach.
Yeah.
Acharyas are, great learned people who have totally given up everything to reach that state. You know,
Okay.
yeah, great, thank you. Anybody else wants to take a dig at what value
Ahimsa,
you're able to relate to? Yeah, Chandra.
ahimsa is really a very, I feel it
Right.
is, you should not hurt others and you, so
Correct.
that you won't be getting any dejected feeling or any harmful feeling or anything, which makes you
Uh-huh.
to treat everybody equal and everyone like a Parama. You have to see God in everybody, right? They say usually, generally, you say same Paramatma is there with everybody. So that you, I feel that ahimsa will makes you that you feel everybody same and then should not do anything to them, which will create you that impression that you and the other person is also the same. And I feel that
Mm-hmm.
you have to be more
Right.
appreciated.
And it is at the thought level.
Not
So even
correct.
at the thought level, I cannot afford to say anything negative about anybody.
Yeah, hurting.
Think
That's
negative.
hurt means not physically also, even like as you said it by walk. I mean, no, by
Vak and
tongue also you
Manasa.
should not hurt others. Yeah,
Correct.
that's
Correct. Yeah.
Shanti.
It
Everything
puts a
goes.
stop to.
Actually, all this
Mhm.
thing is interconnected. One by one, if we keep on amanitum, adambitvam, and everything, you can each each stage if you keep crossing you get that other stage you can come back to that manitum if you cross and you can be the adambitvam also if you learn and then you do that so you can do the ahimsa everything gives you can the end that what Krishna wants us to do. All the
Yeah.
qualities are interconnected, I feel, unless you.
It is interconnected because each one, if I don't have, and I
And
like the way you said it, which is it kind of starts with ahimsa, being totally true to ourselves, right?
yeah,
Having that satyam.
yeah,
If I'm true to myself, then for sure I will not have an exaggerated opinion, which is what manitvam is.
mm,
And if I'm true to myself, I will never say what I'm not, which is what dhambitvam is.
yeah,
And
exactly.
if I'm true to myself, then I will be compassionate. And if I don't think negative at all about anybody, I will always have kshanti,
Shanti. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Or
Very
and
much.
forbearance.
Yeah,
And if I'm
that's,
true to myself, I will always be straightforward in my dealings.
mm, yeah, okay.
So, yeah. So you're right. I mean, I think you picked the core value, I would say, of all of them.
Yes, correct, exactly.
Yeah.
Interconnected. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for actually person.
So it is an attitudinal change. It's not, unlike physical health where we don't have to go on a treadmill or something to see, to see the barometric changes that happen. But this is an attitudinal changes within our personality, and it is easily observable too. Uh, the way we can observe whether we are practicing this, all these values, is by the amount of peace I have at the end of the day. So, if I feel agitated, if I feel stressed out or anything, that is because there was some value which was lacking that day, or something which I said or I did, which is causing my mind to be not at peace. So, that is the barometric change that we're looking for. And like I said, we'll be doing the eighth and the ninth value today. And after that, it gets really deeper. All these values which you see here: dispassion towards sense objects, which is vairagya, and then absence of self importance. We will compare this with amanitvam and adambitvam. And then reflections on the limitations of birth, death, age old sickness, and pain, which is, we don't, we sometimes go so fast that we don't have time to even sit down and think about these processes that are happening in our lives. So, how do we deal with this? And then asaktihi, absence of ownership. Oh, that's a very deep one. So we'll go through each one as pretty soon, actually. So this is where we are, and Arjavam is, of course, alignment in everything, thought, word, and deed. When I'm aligned, then things happen automatically, right? And then Acharya Upasanam, service to the teacher. And here we said, it is basically, uh, you know, this idea of when I have a teacher in my life, a coach in my life, then what happens is things, happen very naturally. And so that is what we said here. And this Acharya Upasanam is this ability to serve, the willingness to serve is a significant aspect of this. And that means this readiness to serve, and it's an happy acceptance. So Acharya Upasanam really encompasses so many different things. At the end of the day, for any knowledge to come into our lives, we have to have a certain sense of humility, a certain sense of gratitude, a sense of respect, and that is what Acharya Upasanam finally means. So this I found this cute poster. So I thought, last time itself I put it out here, which says there's a power in saying, teach me. So it's really about bringing down my own ego to somebody whom I recognize is more superior than me, and it just helps me to become strong enough to grow, wise enough to ask, and humble enough to receive. So I thought it really fits well with this Acharya Upasana. So we went through these three questions last time, and then we did Shaucham. And Shaucham is not just about external cleanliness. External cleanliness will automatically come when there is inner cleanliness, right? So it's a purity of the mind, which leads to the purity of the body. And when we think about cleanliness, it is actually cleanliness from all the dirt which is in our mind in the form of jealousy, anger, hatred, fear, selfishness, etc. In fact, I mean, jealousy is such a strong word, but if you look at what is happening today with after COVID and after the social media becoming so big and everything, it has actually led to a lot of a sense of envy, I would say, because as a friend put something on the social media, or if even at work situation, if somebody gets a promotion or somebody publishes a paper or anything, that leads to a lot of jealousy, right? So how do you get out of this jealousy? So this is something, a very serious thing to think about, even for for generation, today's generation and generations to come. Is the only way this can be combated, I would say, is if we can actually have the person who is jealous or who's looking at things in social media and becoming affected by it, by the progress of somebody, or by how social media likes to make somebody look good, is by actually looking at the positive qualities of that person. Instead of looking at that person negatively, how can I really uh, 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 turn train my mind to turn inwards and to look at the positive aspect of the person. So that's what Shaucham really forces us to look at, is to cleanse myself of each and every one of my negative qualities by really looking at what the opposite would mean. And that is actually called as Pratipaksha Bhavana. And that is what here I'm saying is, how do I become clean? Is really by going through each one and then trying to understand how that can be done. So then we talked about last week about this three different questions. So now we come to this value of stadium. Any questions before we go to stadium? Okay. So stadium basically means this aspect of having sthirata, really firmness, stiram, maybe this, whenever I think about this word stadium, I think about really the huge pillars of temples, how these pillars, they hold all this frame. Last year I had this opportunity to go to this Ellora caves, and there, I mean, these caves are so old. They go up to somewhere around 10th, 11th centuries, 11th century. And if you look at how they have built, how they have carved out, I would say, the strong pillars, that's what stadium really as an analogy comes to my mind. It's about sthirata, it's about perseverance, it is about commitment, and it's essentially commitment or steadfastness in whatever we take up. In this, again, our lives have become so fragmented these days, where, we have the ability to do multitasking, and we think by multitasking we can actually do 10 things in one, the hour that we have been given, right? So it doesn't really happen that way, because anything that I take up, it's not as if I'll be able to immediately complete it, right? I can only complete it only if I put my full attention. But then I'm not able to put my full attention because there'll be some distraction or some obstacle which comes into my way. And sometimes it can be also, something which is just an imaginary obstacle, like, for example, I start to on a project, and then the mind, it plays some game in me saying that, what if you're not able to complete? What if something, you don't get this raw materials or whatever, right? So these are all just imaginary obstacles. And because of this imaginary obstacles, what happens is my mind stops working, you know. So stadium is basically that strength to remain firm in whatever I've taken up, that steadfastness, as it says here, in whatever I've taken up, and it is not just in an action, but even with regard to my mind. Suppose I have a certain conviction. Let's take even say Hinduism, right? Hinduism, suppose, if I'm very convinced that this path that I've taken up, which is, in Hinduism, say Advaita Vedanta, that it will take me to my to my goal. So if I'm firm in this conviction, then I will actually find ways to increase my conviction. So what I will do is I will make sure that slow down my life. I take a little bit of time to ensure that I spend 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of say reflection, in order to ensure that I'm convinced about what I'm doing, right? So Stadium is that aspect. Stadium is that quality of being firm in whatever I take up. So there is this beautiful shloka from Niti Shatakam. I've quoted before some of the verses before also by Bhatrihari. And he actually, in this shloka, he talks about three different types of people. Okay. So, prarabhyate na khalu vigna bhayena nichaihi. That is, he does, it is, so one type of person is the person who uh, will not even start anything because he's afraid of failure. Okay. And then the second category, Vignahi Punaha Punarapi Pratihanyamanaha. No, I'm sorry, Prarabhya Vigna Vihita Viramanti Madhyaha. So there is this middle kind of people, second category, who will start, but the second some obstacle comes in the way, they will just stop it. Okay. And the third category is the Uttama Janaha. Second one is the Madhyama Janaha. The first one, of course, is the lowest. So they are the Vignehi Punaha Punarapi pra- Punaha Vignehi Punaha Punarapi Pratihanyamanaha. So they will keep on trying it, keep on trying all the time, and until they get it, they are convinced that they will be able to get to the goal, and they're convinced that obstacles are there to teach them that this goal can be reached, but it requires some effort. And here I'm reminded of Randy Pausch. Randy Pausch, in his last lecture at Carnegie Mellon, he says this one thing. He says, brick walls are there for a reason. You know, they are there to show us that, to remind us about how strong am I with regard to where I want to go, you know. So, as they say, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, right? So these are the kind of people who are really have resilience built in them. So they will do no matter what. You just have to give it to them, and you can be assured that they will get it done. So that is this quality of Sthairiam, which we will talk about, of course, in the context of our spiritual journey, as to how important it is. But the reason I bring this in a Laukika way is, it's only in our day-to-day life where we are doing so many things that these values, when I constantly practice, I see some progress. And when I see some progress, that automatically gives me some impetus to strengthen this value even further. So, so when it comes to really applying effort to any of our goals, right? we are, again, New Year's just started, whether it's weight loss, whether it is some other goal that I really want to keep up with it. um, it is very easy the first week or something, right? But then somehow the other, the mind, it plays games with us, and it forces us to become unsteady, I would say. So, unsteadium. And this unsteadiness, of course, leads to a lot of stress, because ultimately, we have our to-do lists are so huge, and we have so many projects that we haven't completed. So ultimately, kind of gives us also some guilt in terms of, the potential failure that comes about, right? So stadium basically then means is that's why Lord Krishna in our Bhagavad Gita, he's saying that stadium is really required, and he puts this as one of the 9 values of one of the shlokas of 700 shlokas. And for us, as you can see, it takes about an hour at least even to understand what stadium is. But Arjuna, I mean, this, like I said, all this he got in the battlefield, and because he was so sharp, he was able to get this. So, styrium is why that is important. So, as I pointed out earlier, styrium as a value, which is steadfastness or steadiness or not deviating from a goal at all, is very important for our sadhana. So when my commitment is to know the truth really about myself, right? We know that Aham Brahmasmi, we hear this all the time, but how do I know this? How do I actually come to the realization that I am that Brahman? So this can happen only if I am steadily pursuing this goal, and this knowledge of the self is really not just a partial knowledge. It's not like, the knowledge of, say, chemistry or economics or anything. So all that, maybe I can achieve the goal by getting a PhD, some papers and all that. But here we are talking about the goal of really understanding who I am. So for this goal, the total commitment is required. And in this total commitment, there must be sthiryam or steadfastness. So that is what this value is all about. So, to help us understand this goal, to understand this particular value, I have a few questions here. So, we will go through these thoughts, these reflective questions here. Um, Obviously, in order for this value to have effect, uh, we have to have some kind of maybe not even goals, if you want to think about it. We need to know where we are going. Like I remember one sentence from Alice in Wonderland, when Alice is going, so she asks somebody for the way. And so this person tells her, well, if you don't know where you're going, any path may take you, but you have to know where you're going, most important first. So having a clearly defined goal is very, very important. And so we need to ask ourselves, do I know where I am going in my personal life? So, do we have clearly defined goals in our own personal life? What do you all think?
Always this, Sunita. The styrium reminds me about a child. See,
Uh-huh.
first step, you know, what
Mhm.
goes through in the child's mind to make that first move, the first step. He wants to
Uh-huh.
go to mother or some kind of a toy or something, right? So it is
Mhm.
actually built in. It is
Mhm.
like only thing is we have to identify and do the sadhana, as you said,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
right? This
Yeah.
thyrium, I always
Mhm.
remind, like, the child's first steps, child's focus, like, based on what the child thinks that I have to make a first move, get up and start walking towards what? That goal.
So how do we teach our children to set up a goal,
Yeah.
right? It can
Right,
start
right.
with something very, depending upon what age the child is and what maturity
Uh-huh.
the child is. We
Exactly.
first teach them what is goal setting.
Right. Show them
Right.
a toy or something and, ask
Correct.
them to come kind of a thing.
Right.
And yeah, very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So the clear thing is, we need to have a specific goal in our personal life, and the goals can be very, very short-term focused also in the beginning, but a goal is needed, a goal post. I mean, just like how in sports, right?
Mm.
Football or anything, we first say that, okay, you have to hit the goal. Just like that, we need to have some goal. And as you pointed out, Madhuri, I mean, from the child onward, we need to teach them, like going towards a toy or going towards something, what
Yeah,
a shiny
which is good.
object, anything. Yeah. Then the second question is, do we accept responsibility for fulfillment of our obligations and goals? Very
Anupam,
important point. Yes, Anand.
yeah, just going back to the first one, just
Uh-huh.
remembering in the Chinmaya pledge, we do like we know our responsibilities, give us the ability and courage to fulfill them.
Right. We
Remembering
know
that.
our responsibilities. Very powerful, right? Because do we really know our responsibilities? That's the question we have to ask.
And we keep evolving. Right?
We keep revolving, but it's a question like, even let's take, do we know what our responsibility is towards ourselves? You know, what is my responsibility? So once we know that, then am I being true to it? And am I really doing my job? Whatever we have taken up, you know?
So for that, we need the guidance and the knowledge
Correct.
where we should
Correct.
be going towards. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this third question, try to remember a project or an idea that you carried out persistently till you attain the goal, and then think of projects that you abandoned halfway. Analyze the reasons. Was it because you lacked the commitment towards the end goal? What do you all think? Do you think it was a lack of commitment, or was it there were too many obstacles that came my way, and that is why I left it? I
Lack
think
of
invariably,
resources.
what is the lack of resources?
Yeah.
Again, the lack of resources then points to the fact that was I
Obstacle.
very clear with the goal when I started? Um, like, for example, we put a project together, right? When we put the project, especially in US, you have this project management tool where, um, it'll tell you, do you have the right amount of resources? Do you have the right amount of time? Do you have the right amount of people? Do you have the equipment? Do you think you'll be able to complete within the allotted time? So, yes, lack of resource is one, but I also point out to the fact that did I set that project goal correctly? So, this fourth question, what is the goal that brought you to Vedanta? What do you hope to achieve? Are you motivated towards reaching this goal using the methods of Vedanta? So, what are the methods of Vedanta?
All the qualities we're discussing.
Yes, they are some of the, yes, that one. And then even if you go back to Tattva Bodh or even the beginning, the third chapter, of course, Karma Yoga from Bhagavad Gita, how to work. That is one of the um, method of Vedanta, right? Then ahimsa, not just ahimsa, but in the sixth chapter about the methods of meditation. all that. Those are all methods. So how much, so what is the goal that brought you to Vedanta? Any thoughts on this?
By seeing the elder generations go through the process.
Uh-huh. So that was a motivation
Yes.
for us to know that this Vedanta will, even a simple thing like Vedanta will help me to achieve peace. We think that work will allow me to achieve peace, but not really, because we find that as I get more and more into my work, I get more bogged down. So, and then the fifth one, how do we rate our qualifications that are necessary for understanding and assimilating the knowledge of Vedanta? So, what qualifications are they talking about?
The 20 values, I think.
They are means, I would
Little
say,
bit.
by
Okay.
practicing, but like, Shama, Dama, Uparama, Mumukshutvam, how committed, Mumukshutvam, how committed am I towards this goal? So, and then the qualification is, okay, how much am I able to control the mind, which of course is coming up next, Atma Vinigraha. But, and then how does the value stadium translate practically into day-to-day life? Yeah, this is a good question. What do you think? How does the value stadium towards the attainment of self-knowledge translate practically in day-to-day life?
This helps not to forget the real goals and not
Uh-huh.
to get distracted. And that's the reminder the styrium gives us.
Mm-hmm. So that is one, it reminds us of our goal, but it also helps me to be more focused and to know that, in a simple practical way, I know that I have maybe 10 hours of work time, starting from 8 to 8, I have, of course, an hour for lunch, half an hour for breaks and all that. But then I have 10 hours. How steadfast am I in setting up my goal and reaching towards it in my day-to-day life? If I'm practicing that, and in that whole life, I also have some amount where a small amount of meditation or reflection is part of it, then it makes it easy for me to practice at stadium to ensure that I'm doing my 10 minutes of meditation. I ensure that I'm doing my 10 minutes of exercise, ensure that I'm, taking care of my health. All this also is part of stadium. How firm am I with my commitments? How firm am I with my conviction? So the last
Styrium,
question is, yeah, go ahead.
styrium and also the arjavam also, right?
Uh-huh.
Arjavam, which says like, straightforwardness.
Correct,
And
correct.
also being truthful to myself, like, in my
Right.
progress and my
Exactly.
goal. Okay, yeah, thanks.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm glad you're seeing the connections, Madhuri. Yeah. So if I'm straightforward, so it again goes back to the fact that if I'm pure in my mind, that is Shaucham, if I'm clean in my mind, then that allows me to be straightforward in my dealings, Arjavam. And if I'm straightforward, then what happens is automatically any other obstacles that comes my way, I will not allow it to distract me or, distract me from what I'm doing. And that is where stadium comes into play, right? And ahimsa, of course, it allows me to be, ahimsa is, of course, it's sort of connected to Shaucham also, because if I'm always very pure-hearted in my mind, especially about people where I don't want to hurt, I don't want to hurt my environment, automatically that feeds into um, the purity Shaucham, which again leads to Arjavam and then finally Sairyam. Yeah. So, yeah, they're all connected, but each one is needed in order for me to really build that arsenal within myself to combat any of the negativities. Okay. So, next we move on to Atma Vinigraha. Now we are going a little more deeper and we are trying to understand where exactly is all this happening, what is the culprit, who is the culprit. So Atma Vinigraha basically means mastery over the mind. Okay. Now one may say, oh, Atma, isn't Atma the same as Brahman? Isn't Atma, something else? But depending upon the context, in Sanskrit, we have a way to relate to it. So here, Atma definitely means the mind, okay? And Vinigraha means mastery. And it also mastery or a sort of a restraint, or curbing my like for example curbing my appetite, curbing my taste, curbing my sense of wanting the gulab jamun or something. So this is what mastery is. So Atmavinigra is our ability to control a mind from its natural tendency. So the mind loves to go towards gulab jamun. Mind loves to, look at more beautiful saris or dresses or anything. Or mind loves to keep on, changing my decorations in the house. So the mind is constantly, because that's the role of the mind. Mind is something which has to be always running towards something or the other. But then we have to channelize that mind towards that goal. And that's why that stadium is important, because stadium allows me to recognize that I need to have goals, right? I'm sure and we have another 10 values. So in that, one of them might be more about goals, But Atma Vinigraha is about restraining the mind, controlling the mind, and it is about the aspect of controlling the mind over matter, So the mind loves to go towards matter, like I said, either food, connected to sense organs, or, any of this one. So one needs to have that strong control over the mind. So mind should be made as, if you remember when we were doing our study group, when we used to talk about Kindle life, where mind is like the secretary, and intellect is the boss. So I need to make sure that the mind is always at the bidding of the intellect. So this is the important thing about having a proper focused mind. So uh, with this mind, one can really do a lot of things. Like, in chapter 6, we have this value, Udare Datmanatmanam Natmanam Avsadiyet, where mind can be a real friend, mind can also be an enemy or foe. But how I exercise my mind will and how focused am I will actually make my mind as an enemy or a friend, right? So it is about the mastery of the mind. It is not about the brain. Many times people think, oh, it's about the brain and everything. But the mind is, again, very subtle. It is something that needs to be mastered. It's not the brain. And why is that? So when we think about mind, we of course think about thoughts. We think about the flow of thoughts. And this flow of thoughts can actually be thought about as three different kind of thoughts. So, we talked about the brain, right? But brain and the mind are actually different. Okay. So, uh, most of you live in Detroit, and Detroit is all about driving cars. And owning a car for each one of ourselves has become a sixth kosha, right? And driving this car, we find that we are most of the time, it's like we are in an autopilot mode, right? Not only with our own lives, but with driving the car also, we are in autopilot mode. So, if the mind is in our control, then we can really do a lot of things. So let's see what are the three kind of ways in which our mind works. You know, so one is our mind is very impulsive, and we've all seen this. Especially towards the end of the day. End of the day, we come home and we are tired, and at that point, there is just no way I can control the mind. And that's why for me, actually living in this ashram is really nice, because I'm given a room. The kitchen is far away. I have to walk about almost 7 minutes to go to the kitchen. And early morning, sometimes that's a little difficult because you want to have your coffee right in front of you. And all this time, I've never had even a heater in my room. So it prevents me from, making my coffee or tea or whatever. I just get some hot water. And just before the class, of course, I just put a tea bag and I bring it here. So, I don't get to have my right. So the point about it is it helps to some extent in having that control of the mind. So, evening or whenever the body is tired, we get into this kind of impulsive thinking. Then, mechanical thinking is, like I said, we have a routine for ourselves daily, and we follow that mechanically. I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I take my shower, I eat my breakfast, I take the car, I drive. All this is mechanical, right? So, in which there is a certain amount of preconditioning, correct? But then finally, there is this thinking which is deliberate. Okay, deliberate is where it is like the buddhi, so it is the intellect. So mind is impulsive, mind is mechanical, but buddhi, which is also thoughts, it is very deliberate. It thinks through, and it really guides the mind. So for us, it is very important that we move all the way from being impulsive or mechanical to a kind of a more deliberate way of thinking. And that is what Atma Vinigraha is. Atma Vinigraha is that mastery of the mind, and that mastery over putting things in a very deliberate word. So now the question is, how do we put this in action? Okay. How do we put this mastery of mind in action? Not very easy, right? Because as we grow older, and this is what, one of my observations by staying with them, seeing how my parents are, at the age of 90 plus, what goes on in their mind, and are they really able to control the mind? And there is actually very difficult, any kind of control we want to do, or any kind of changing the way we think happens only when we are young. As we grow older, even though this is not a brain activity or something, but it is not because our nerve cells are getting disintegrated, or muscles are, but it's because our mind is getting focused on all these pain in the body or whatever, right? So if at all we need to practice anything about this mastery of mind, it has to happen when everything is going good for us. you know we still have time now. So that is what I meant to say is, even now it is not too late. We need to see how I can be practice awareness, practice alertness. you know so we need to get into, so only when we practice proper thinking, it can lead to what we call this as effortless thinking. Now, effortless thinking is not the same as impulsive thinking or mechanical thinking. It is not that. Effortless thinking is where I have now practiced all the values. Now my thinking becomes effortless and it is in tune with the rhythm of the universe. Okay? That is what is effortless thinking. It sort of conforms to the highest universal values, you know, and it brings me the closest to that Brahman, you know. So at the relative level, we have um, uh, this. So if I have that kind of effortless thinking, I will be able to really sort of understand what is happening in the world. I mean, happening in my family, happening in my community. So in a way, it is a way of the closest thing towards understanding, what that ultimate Brahman is. So effortless thinking. Swami Tejamananda would say effortless awareness of one's true self is meditation. So, effortless thinking will take us to that effortless awareness. So, we need to have that kind of a thinking mastery for us to function in this world. So, that thinking mastery will really lead us towards that knowledge of the self. And that is why this qualification is really very important. And when we talk about this one, let's talk about what is relative mastery. So, if this mastery, so relative mastery is this Atma Vinigraha practiced while I am doing something. Okay. Um, and that is, if I have that relative mastery, I can be really, it leads to spontaneous thinking, spontaneous action in everything that I want. So relative mastery is actually characterized by being very alert and being very deliberate in my actions. So we said, mind can be either impulsive, it can be deliberate, or it can be mechanical, right? But if I truly understand how to control the mind, then this relative mastery can help me in so many different ways because I will not be impulsive, I will not be mechanical, and my mind is completely where my hands are, you know. So that is the relative mastery in the day-to-day world. And and that is, of course, what I said is effortless thinking. It allows us to develop alertness and awareness. So if I'm alert and if I'm conscious of what my mind is doing, then I will always have a choice on where I want the mind to go. And with that choice, I can hold to commitments, even though there are obstacles of distraction or anything. It will help me. Actually, this Atma Vinigraha will help a lot with stairyam, you know. So stairyam is being firm to my commitment. But if I have mastery over my mind, that will help my commitments to stay with my commitments. So Atma Vinigraha helps that. So it allows me to develop alertness and awareness of what I need to do. Any thoughts, any questions?
Oh, Sunita, in olden days, to get to this point, elders used to do the fasting, and some of the days they used to remember to do all those things will help. Also,
Mm-hmm.
like, restrictions, food restrictions, controlling the mind. Like, I
Correct.
cannot eat
Correct.
this kind of a thing
Right.
slowly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought it because it basically is practice of the mind. So it is not, so today it is preventing the mind from becoming mechanical.
Hmm.
So you're putting a break in your schedule and telling the mind that, okay, for one day we are not going to do anything. I'm not going to have my regular breakfast. I'm not going to have a regular. So from that standpoint, Atma Vinigraha is helping our fasting. If I have a mastery with the mind, I can, uh, I can tell you, I've been trying to practice a 16-hour fast,
Mm.
and I'm miserably failing in it.
Difficult.
Every day I will think, okay, after 4 o'clock, I will not eat anything.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. By
It's
5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, my stomach is like
At
asking for
least
something.
coffee.
begging. Yeah, it's begging.
Yes. So, so very important, even and that's why this relative mastery over thinking is an important aspect to think is in day-to-day life, am I practicing this alertness and awareness? Because my mind is becoming impulsive, my mind is becoming mechanical. I need to force it to become deliberate. So, in some ways, Thairyam, by forcing myself to have a goal helps, but then having the mastery helps Thairyam to keep up my commitments.
Mm.
And in order to keep up my commitment, my mind has to be clean, which is where Shaucham comes into play. Because if my mind is clear and free of any negative values, then it'll be focused on what I want to do, and that is where Shaucham is. It'll help me to be straightforward, which is Arjavam. And if I practice Arjavam, then Amanitvam and Adambitvam is automatically taken care of. And then, of course, Ahimsa helps um, in making sure, this is almost a starting point. If I'm very, if I don't hurt anybody at the thought level, then, so you see, each one feeds into the other, and practice of each of these values allows me to have the peace that I'm looking for. Ultimately, all I want is peacefulness in my life, you know, and I will be
Yeah.
very mindful. So, Atma Vinigraha allows me to be mindful in everything.
Mindful.
Yeah. So, again, I have a few reflective questions here. Um, so, the questions are, if we are alert in consciousness of what I'm doing, do I have a choice over my way of thinking? What do you think? So there are four answers. I will always have a choice. I'm usually, um, so always means 100%, usually means 75%, sometimes is 50%, almost never is never. So, I mean, I'm always, I just am impulsive. What do you think?
Also,
If I'm clear and
usually,
conscious. Usually,
mm,
okay, you're right. I mean, depending on where we are, in our own sadhana, I guess, if you're alert and conscious of what your mind is doing, do I have a choice? I think we will always have a choice. It'll immediately there will be a choice that opens up. If I'm not alert or conscious, then what happens is I become very impulsive. I think there's no choice and I just go blindly. But at every moment, I have a choice in what I want to do. So this, so what is our predominant mode of thinking? I think this is something we need to answer for ourselves. It's not a simple impulsive or am I mechanical or am I deliberate? But I have to think myself during the daytime, how am I functioning? When I'm driving, how am I functioning? When I'm working, how am I functioning? And then almost you can write a whole journal, a paragraph on what my predominant mode of thinking is. Then are we convinced that a relative mastery of mind is essential for Vedanta? So, relative mastery is where in my day to day world, where I'm practicing being conscious and alert, will that help my ultimate goal of, um, you know, understanding who I am? That is what this question is asking.
Yes.
Yes, Jayashree? Okay. If yes, now tell something to think. How do we plan to cultivate this value and to make our thinking more spontaneously conform to the universal values? So it's a loaded question. First of all, where am I today in how I'm leading my life? How am I practicing all those seven values or eight values we talked about? If I practice those eight values, then I will work in my whatever I'm doing today with a lot of alertness and knowing what my choices are and making the choice to take the right choice, to make the right choice. Once I do that, I will really get into an effortless thinking. Effortless thinking is where I don't have to think at all. And I used to think many times when I've seen some of the best CEOs, how do they make the decision so spontaneously? You know, without any judgment, without any this. And I think it is, as we practice some of these values, keeping the larger good in mind, then it's very easy for us to spontaneously conform to universal values, right? So, something to think about as a sadhana. Anything else to say or comment? If not, I think we
No,
will stop.
practice
Yeah,
makes
go ahead.
perfect.
Practice makes perfect, but conscious practice makes perfect.
Right.
If I'm, because practice can be mechanical also, right? So it is not mechanical practice, but conscious practice will really do it. Yeah. So we'll stop at this point. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Thank you.
Thank you,
So we'll
Sunitha
see
ji.
you
Thank you
next
so
week.
much.
Hari Om. You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Thank you very
Sunita.
much.
Take
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much,
Bye.
Sunitha.
Hari
Hari Om.
Om.
Thank you, Sunita ji.
Hari Om.
Thank you,
Hari Om,
Sunita
thank
ji.
you so
Hari
much.
Om, Hari Om.
Hari Om. See
Hari
you.
Om.
Bye.
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 So it's really important to connect all these values, seeing how each one feeds into each other. So see if you can bring some, examples where all the values can fit in well.